Hello viewers, so allow me to say a thing or two about the diplomatic conduct and the foreign policy stage of Kenya. And I want to draw the historical perspective of the shape of the foreign policy of Kenya and now try to create a nexus between the current diplomatic stalemate between Kenya and Sudan and how the regime of President William Ruto has largely been viewed as one which is trying to recalibrate the shape of the foreign policy of Kenya over the years. Now, towards the independence of Kenya, President Jomo Kenyatta is an individual who adopted a more conservative foreign policy, and so he was against the Casablanca bloc of African states that were led by leaders like Kwame Nkrumah, who had wanted a political confederation of the African states. It's imperative to note that Kenyatta himself was part of the Monrovia Group, which largely had wished for the African states to remain with the colonial borders, and so there was need for the recognition of the territories as they were at independence. And so Kenyatta adopted the foreign policy that was more conservative, nearer at home, that is the Horn of African region and the extended Africa, while he adopted radical foreign policy and diplomatic conduct at a global stage, because basically the focus of the foreign policy of Kenya at independence was to attract foreign capital for more economic development of a newly independent third world country. And so that largely was the shape of the foreign policy of Kenya during the reign of President Kenyatta. And President Moi largely adopted a similar foreign policy, and that is present in what some scholars have said Kenya had a quiet diplomacy, and it only shifted during the Cold War politics. Although that was still at the global stage, Kenya largely practiced a foreign policy that was quiet, or rather conservative, in the region. And basically, largely that means that the foreign policy of Kenya has always been that of good neighborliness. And if you look at Kenya and Sudan, I would say we've relatively had a cordial diplomatic relationship. And Kenya is part of the countries that played a key role during the peace agreement in 2005 that would lead to the establishment of a sovereign and independent South Sudan, a process that was under the stewardship of Presidents Moi and Kibaki. So this was also the same case with President Uhuru Kenyatta. In fact, President Uhuru Kenyatta is one which is an individual who has been viewed largely in this region as a statesman, especially in his role trying to mediate some regional conflicts like the Tigray conflict in Ethiopia, the Somalian conflict, and also the conflict in East DRC. So when President Ruto came into power, he is one who was viewed that there was going to be a divergence in the continuity of the foreign policy of Kenya. And a very key case study in this case is Western Sahara question. Remember at the inauguration of President Ruto, Gali, the president of Western Sahara, attended his inauguration, and Ruto was he was a tacit individual in that Western Sahara region, because at some point he said Kenya rescinded the recognition of Western Sahara as an independent state. But later on, a statement was issued stating that Kenya took the stand of the AU, and the position of AU has always been Western Sahara is an independent state. So now, although that is not what I really want to focus on, I really want to talk much about the Kenya-Sudan diplomatic conduct. So the civil war in Sudan that broke out in April of 2023, especially the forces of Sudan Armed Forces of General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan against the forces of General Mohamed Dagalo of the Rapid Support Forces, the RSF. And the IGAD came in to try and mediate the conflict. It was led by a quartet group of presidents and the Prime Minister of Ethiopia, led by Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, Djibouti, South Sudan, and of course William Ruto of Kenya. So after the constitution of that quartet group, Sudan downplayed that mediation process, because there were allegations that Ruto has economic ties with General Dagalo of RSF, and as an emancipation of that allegation, Ruto welcomed General Dagalo to a red carpet to the Kenyan State House in January of 2024. And recently, the events that happened at KICC, where the RSF seemed to form a parallel regime on Kenyan soil, is an aspect that has now shifted the diplomatic relations into more conflictual ones between Kenya and Sudan, which is an aspect that really is recalibrating the shape of the foreign policy of Kenya, which historically has always been viewed as one which supports good neighborliness and one which is conservative. And Kenya has always been viewed as a country that has always been at the forefront to mediate regional conflicts. But under this regime of President William Ruto, there has been allegations that he has meddled into the East DRC conflict, and so that's why the Nairobi process failed, and Tshisekedi of DRC, he preferred the Angola peace process led by President Lourenco. So what I would say is that President William Ruto really needs to sit down and try and consult with experts in the field of foreign policy, so that there is a reassessment of the shape to which his government has been conducting foreign policy, because this is an aspect that it really did play out a key role in the outcome of the African Union Commission chairpersonship elections that were recently concluded. So I think those are my arguments. Thank you.